All right, Charlotte has a new head coach, Steve Clifford. For anybody that's a Charlotte fan, you should be familiar with him. He was with us for 6 seasons, and I'm indifferent about it. It's the same thing with the draft. There are some positives with Steve Clifford, and there are some negatives. He does check off some boxes of mine that I have in a head coach, and there's some boxes that are left unchecked. So let's start with the positives. Steve Clifford, his time with us was decent, I say. We had 2 playoff appearances, and for the Charlotte Hornets, that's really all you can ask, is to have playoff performances, or at least get in the playoffs. So we did. The most recent time we got into the playoffs was in 2016 with Kemba going off that year, Nicholas Batum being a solid NBA player with us, and us having Spencer Hawes on our team. But that was the last time we made it to the playoffs, was under Steve Clifford. If you guys are unmistaken with that series, it was a pretty good series. I believe we faced the Miami Heat. It went to 7. We could have won, but Dwayne Wade had that crazy game with the purple shirt guy sitting front row. If you're not knowing what I'm talking about, it's some crazy shit that happened. But that was the last time we made the playoffs. So you have to give Steve Clifford that. He has success with us in the past. Yes, the East was kind of depleted in 2016. There wasn't really that many good teams in the East. So you have to give him that. Other than the Cavs in the East that year, there was really nobody. Maybe the Pacers, but you have to give him that. And you have to give him, in this, 5 to 6 years with us, our defensive rating under Steve Clifford was kind of insane. I knew he was a good defensive coach, but I didn't know how good he was. So when he came to our team in 2013-2014 season, obviously we had a rough fucking team. We have Al Jefferson on that team, Bismack Biyombo, young Bismack Biyombo, I should add, Anthony Tolliver, a bunch of random guys. Cody Zeller is a rookie. And we had the 5th ranked defensive rating, which is kind of crazy. The 5th ranked defensive rating, which, that's unexpected of the Charlotte Hornets. If you look at our team this year, it is not the 5th ranked defense. Obviously, throughout the years, it goes down to the 9th ranked. In 2016, it was the 8th. 2017, it was the 14th. And 2018, it was the 16th. So obviously, it's steadily decreased. But that was one of my boxes to get a head coach, was to get a defensive-minded head coach, because that's our main weakness right now, is defense. We have offense figured out, right? We have all these guys that can contribute, that can pass, that can shoot, that can play make. We were top 5 offense last year, and we were top 5, I believe top 3 in 2020. That was not the problem. Defense was the problem. We were giving up astronomical numbers on defense. So yes, that is great that we got a defensive-minded head coach. On to the negatives. The one problem that I have with him is that through his time with us, through his 5 to 6 years, and even his time in Orlando, because if you're not familiar with Steve Clifford, a longtime assistant, was an assistant in the NBA for about, 13 years with the Knicks, Houston, Orlando. He got his first head coaching job with us, and then he was the Orlando Magic head coach for the last 3 years. The main problem I see with him is, who did he develop? See, we have this really young team for the Charlotte Hornets right now, and even when he took them over, he had this weird mix of guys, but he did have players that he could have developed, and my problem is he didn't develop any of them. Cody Zeller, a subpar player. He came in with Steve Clifford. Cody Zeller was a rookie when Steve Clifford got hired. Didn't really develop him. The only player that had major success under Steve Clifford was Kemba Walker. And do you attribute that to Steve Clifford, or do you just attribute that to Kemba Walker being a great player? I'm not really sure. I mean, Michael Kidd Gilchrist had, a pretty good stint with us, and he came in. He was a sophomore player when Steve Clifford got the job. Maybe him, but other than that, I'm looking at the rosters throughout the years, and there's not really any player development at all. Obviously, that's kind of up to the front office for not drafting the greatest players over the years. But again, that falls on the head coach. If you look at James Borrego, although I don't like, his rotations or the minutes he hands out, the in-game adjustments, there's a lot of things I didn't like about James Borrego. But the thing I did like is that you can attribute a lot of the young player success, Devontae Graham, even Terry Rozier, although he got more chances, there was young player success under James Borrego. And even with the Orlando Magic, although he came in, they had a rough team. They only won 21 games last season. There's not a lot of players that you can, through the 3 years that you can say, oh, he developed that player. Like, for example, I'm going to give a pretty rough example, but I remember him playing in college. Chuma Okeke is a player that I thought with the Orlando Magic, although he tore his ACL March Madness before getting drafted, I thought he would be a pretty good NBA player. He did not develop. And is that on the coach? Is that on the training staff? Is that on Chuma Okeke? I'm not really sure, but it's interesting. Another player I look at is Jalen Suggs. Although he was only a rookie, he might have been the worst rookie out of that 2021 class. Steve Clifford did not really develop him. We'll see what he does with a new head coach next year for his sophomore season. But that is my big problem, is that who does he develop? And with our young team, we need player development. I know Miles Bridges was just a 20-point-per-game scorer, and he's looking for a max contract, but he still has room to improve. He still has that playmaking ability. He still can make that next step. LaMelo, even though he was an all-star, we need a team to make it to the playoffs. That is our one goal, is to make it to the playoffs, and we need player development for that. James Bouknight, a young player, we need him to develop. Mark Williams, who we just drafted, we need him to develop. Will that coach develop these guys? I don't know. I don't know if that's our guy. I like the defense. I like the defensive rating, although it kind of fell off throughout his years. That can be attributed to like the rosters he was dealt with. But the bottom line is the overarching question that I had with any head coaching hired, and I addressed it when the Hornets hired Kenny Atkinson, and I should make a whole video about Kenny Atkinson because that is just, you don't see that a lot, right? And I'm out of focus, but you don't see that a lot where a head coach commits to a team for nearly 2 weeks, Let's get my shit in focus. Commits to a team for nearly 2 weeks and then comes out with half-assed remarks saying why he can't accept the job that he knew everything about why he said he couldn't accept it anymore, his family being in San Francisco. He knew all of that before he accepted the Hornets job. And to leave us 5 days before the NBA draft is rough. But the overarching question that I get back to is, with any head coach, even Kenny Atkinson when he was with us for 2 weeks, will they take us to the next step? Will they take us into the playoffs and actually win? I don't know if Steve Clifford does that. I don't know if Mike D'Antoni would have done that if we hired him as well. I know our offense would have been, off the charts, but our defense probably would have lacked under Mike D'Antoni. But is Steve Clifford the guy that takes us to that next level? I think of the Warriors. In 2013, 2014, they had Mark Jackson. If you know who Mark Jackson is, he calls some of the NBA games. And he was pretty good with the Warriors. Every year that he was the coach under the Warriors increased their wins, and they did pretty well in the playoffs the last year that Mark Williams was the head coach, and they fired him. And it was kind of unprecedented at the time because he was a winning coach, and they didn't really need to fire him. But they bring in a better coach, Steve Kerr, and a dynasty happens. So I don't know if that's our coach right now, Steve Clifford. It's interesting, though. I think this was like a safe pick. You know how you have those stocks? You have like the risky stocks and the safe stocks. This is definitely the S&P 500. This is the safest stock you can buy because he's been with us. It's low risk, probably low reward. So interesting. All right, that's it for me. I'll see you guys later.